Hey guys, hope you're all well. Right, just a little update to where I am with this build. As you've seen, it started, second kick. I've had a few sort of little issues, which is quite normal after a completely fresh rebuild. So what I've had going on, I had an electrical problem to start with. It literally took me all day to figure it out. I started the bike up the following morning. It started first kick, but then I turned it off and I turned it back on to kick it again 10-15 minutes later or whatever, and it was completely dead. Oh god, what's up with this? I don't know. Checking the fuel and all that, I was trying to kick it, then realised it had no power. So I checked the lights, no indicators, no horn, no nothing. I thought, right, that's got to be fuse. So I checked the fuse, and sure enough, it had blown. All right, what's the reason? Have I done something wrong? Which is quite easily done, you know. I don't mind admitting you can make mistakes. I always tell myself MotoGP and Formula 1 mechanics make mistakes, so a guy in a shed at the bottom of the garden it's more than okay to make mistakes and own up to them. So yeah, I spent pretty much the whole day going through all the wiring again. It was an absolute nightmare to source the problem, hence why I didn't really film it, because I just put the blinkers on and just got my head down trying to solve it. So I went through literally everything from front to back, and then I ended up blowing several fuses, keep trying things. I even swapped the ignition over, the ignition key. I slowly went through unplugging stuff to eliminate it, and plugging the black box, the electronic ignition, and unplugging the live feed to the front of the bike that controls absolutely everything up there. And it literally was the very last thing I tried. And it turned out, because obviously when I swapped the ignition over, there's so many wires to the ignition, I can't remember quite as many. I was connecting them, turning the power on, see if it would blow a fuse, then connecting the next wire, turning the power on to see if it would blow the fuse, and eventually got round to the one that blew the fuse, and it was one that went to the flasher unit and the rear brake light. So then I unplugged the flasher unit. It didn't blow the fuse. Then the rear brake light, and it blew the fuse. So turns out it wasn't something I had done. Well, sort of. So on this bike, it's running one of these backlights. I'm sure you've all seen them. A lot of people use them on classic bikes and custom builds. So I'm just showing you this to be aware of it. So inside this rubber boot, the wires go in to the main body of the light. So that, I think I got this one. That one's just your rear light, and that one is your brake light. Both live feeds, and the body of the light itself is the earth. As you can see with this tab here, where you bolted up, that is your earth. So this wire here, I don't know if you can actually see it on camera, you probably won't. The connector on this wire is so close to the body of the light, it was touching. So it was constantly earthing the live out. So I've remedied that by putting a sleeve over this, and I have now fitted a rubber grommet into this part of the light, so it definitely keeps these wires away from this rim here. Yeah, something as stupid as that just stopped the whole bike. So yeah, if you do get any of these lights, I mean they are actually a nice light. Just be aware of that. It's worth a check. Like I say, I've put a rubber grommet in there now, which keeps the wires well away from the edge. Anyway, that was the first thing. The second thing, I had a rattle. Quite a strange rattle. And bear in mind, at this point, I hadn't gone through everything on the bike, because some things I still loosely assemble in case there's problems and stuff. So I had this rattle, and it's quite strange because it was intermittent. It wasn't constant with the rotation of the engine or anything like that. So I wasn't majorly worried about it. That turns out I'd left the engine mount loose that goes to the frame of the gearbox. So I tightened all that up and it stopped it completely. Like I say, I've still yet to go through absolutely everything. I'm nearly there. I'm just working my way through it. The next thing, it got a bit hit and miss on starting. So I double checked the timing. That is absolutely bang on with the electronic ignition. It is absolutely spot on, that is. So it's carb. Now, excuse me, with these amyl carbs, I see quite a lot of people getting downhearted about them, thinking you can just get one and shove it on and everything's going to be perfect. That's not always the case. They do need a bit of tuning, bit of messing about sometimes. Yes, I have had them where you put them on and everything's tip top and the bike runs fine. But also, I would never ever buy a second-hand amyl carb. Even if it looks great, people clean them up, put them on eBay and end up getting sometimes good money for them. I've made that mistake. I've done that for the Triumph bobber I built. Carb looked beautiful, put it on, it wouldn't run the bike right. I tried everything for it, even replacing some of the parts for brand new. Whatever I'd done, it would not run the bike right. In the end, after wasting loads of time, money on parts for the carb, I just went and bought a new one, stuck it on, and it was perfect. And obviously a little bit of messing about with the air screw and things like that, and it ran perfect. I've known these to even warp and go out of shape, and you can't necessarily see it with the naked eye. They can wear in all sorts of weird and wonderful places. So since then I've never ever bought a second-hand one. So next, we've got to get the tank on. We've got to get over to Ian and sort that out. I've got to sort the carb out, because like I say, starting can be a bit hit and miss on it. So the best way to do that, obviously, you can do it to a certain degree while the bike stood still, but we really need to be riding it and mess about, you know, get the bike under load, get it working, and then we can have a mess about with the carb properly. So like I said earlier, people do get really disheartened with these amyl carbs. I often see people saying they're a load of rubbish. They're not. How long have these been put on British bikes and everything's been fine? But carbs are a bit of a dark art. Even times I start losing patience with them. But there's quite a few things to take into consideration with these. We'll have a look on this. Is that the amyl one? By the way, yeah, that's an amyl one. That's a Wassel one. Exactly the same. Apparently, could be wrong, they are made in the same factory. They are identical. In fact, the Wassel one's got nice coatings on the throttle slide. It actually looks a little bit better, like finish wise. But yeah, apart from that, they are identical. And I have used them and they've been absolutely fine. Let's open this one up. These are actually for 500 Enfields, not a 350, which Dan's bike is. So when we get to sorting the carb out, I am going to try and start it again in a bit. Actually, I haven't started it since yesterday, so we will see how it starts again. Like I say, it's been a bit hit and miss, but we will get to the bottom of it. So obviously, setting your carb up, you can have richness and weakness. This is not running weak. The bike tends to get far too hot, and you often see bikes where the exhaust pipe's just completely discoloured. That's not a good thing. I've had this bike sat here ticking over for a long time, and the exhaust is barely changed colour, which is what you want. So on these, you got the needle. I don't know if you can see that. You got different slots on here, and I'll tell you what, all these little adjustments do make big differences when you're trying to get your carb into tune. Also, like I said earlier about second-hand carbs, these do wear and you can't necessarily see it, but it will have a big effect on how the carb runs. Hence why I don't buy second-hand ones no more. But obviously you can replace all these parts. Every part's available, but sometimes even that doesn't correct the problem. The problem can be actually in the body of the carb. So yeah, they're just adjustments to take into consideration. Also, we've got the slide. This cutout here come in all sorts of different sizes, so you get a lower cutout or a higher cutout, which all can affect the running of the bike, rich or weak. So we may have to look at that as well. I'm just going through this to like give you scenarios of things that we may have to change and sort out. So yeah, not a lot of people think about the cutout of this, which does affect the running. And then obviously we've got this screw here that sort of alters your tick over. Then you got the air screw, so you got to get them to sort of, what I normally do is back off with the tick over till it's the bike's starting to flutter, then adjust the air screw to get it running nicely on tick over. So there is quite a few things to take into consideration. Your float height in the bowl as well, and then obviously the one that everybody goes straight for is the jets, especially when you're running open filter and straight through exhaust. The jetting can be either way. You can be too big or it can be too small. Now for these 500 carbs, I have got a selection of jets each way, smaller and larger, so I can have a mess about as I'm getting the bike running better. But with Dan's bike, the 350, I've got no jet, so I may have to get some, but I'm going to try and do the small adjustments first before we go down that route, because you know it can get quite expensive. But if we have to go down that route, we will have to go down that route. We're replacing slides and all that. So yeah, people do get sort of disheartened. We think they're going to just bolt these carbs on and they're going to be perfect. That's not always the case, but it is just very basic stuff to go through to get it running right. That's probably your most expensive gamble if you've got to mess with different slides with your cutouts. All the rest of it, like your needles and stuff, if they're worn, and your jets, they ain't sort of really expensive. So you try everything else out and do that one last if it has to be done. We'll go through all this when the bike is able to be put onto the road and I can run it, because you really need to run it even going uphill slightly. Really get the bike under load, see where the carb in the rev range is fluttering, and then you attack them parts to get it all tuned in properly. But if it's needed, I'll go into that in better detail. It's a bit of a, some people get, like I say, get so disheartened with it and end up putting the old Enfield car back on and say, oh, they're much better. Like I say, you can't just go and buy one of these and bolt them straight on. Sometimes it does work, sometimes it doesn't. You have to mess with them. Like I say, especially when you're running on an open filter and straight through exhaust. Normally you do have to mess with them. Also your plug, when we do run it up and down the road and we've got it under load and sort of nearly enough full throttle, we'll probably stop immediately, turn the bike off, check the colour of the plug. Black and sooty, it's rich and all that. We'll go through it all. Hopefully it's going to be quite simple to sort out. Like I say, it's just a bit hit and miss on the startup, but we'll solve it. It's nearly there. So yeah, I'm happy how it's going. Like I said before, some bikes, when you've built them, you're just very lucky with, and they're perfect straight away. On the odd one, you do have a few little things to iron out on it, like this one, like the wiring. And sometimes, you know, it's a mistake I've made, and sometimes it's, even new parts can fail or be faulty, but so far so good. We've had none of that. It was just that wire on the back light. Anyway, I'm going to get this pushed outside. Oh, we're going to try and start it again, aren't we? See how it behaves this morning, and then we'll push this outside. I'll clean this shed up a bit because it looks like an helicopter's landed in here, and then we're going to get the tank ready to take over to Ian. And why that's at Ian's, I'm going to go through this again and again and again till I'm happy everything's set right, tightened up, nothing's going to fall off, and it's just peace of mind for me. So yeah, we've got a few days of messing about, but we are actually 99% there. Anyway, let's try and start it, see what happens this morning. It's not a particularly cold day, so we'll just go with flooding the bowl out. Also with these Amel carbs, I'm rabbiting on, ain't I? They don't like a big handful of throttle when you're trying to start them. You see people starting bikes, it seems to be an instant reaction as they kick, their wrist twists. There seems to be a connection. No, you just leave the throttle dormant when you're trying to start these. If it fires, then you can just probably feather it in a tiny bit, but a lot of people wang that throttle open, and that's not going to help starting. Right, we're all on, aren't we? See, it tried. See, it'd done this a few times yesterday, and the damn thing wouldn't start, and I just had to leave it sit for a bit. Second again. Let the blood get round a bit. Don't get the fog near the exhaust. too bad, is it? I'll say we'll know more, probably can't hear me properly, when we give it a proper run and the bike's under load. But there's no, the exhaust is not sutting up, which is a sign of richness. I don't know. I'd say we'll give it a run, and it just might get away with a bit of fine tuning on the like the pilot air screw and stuff like that. Shut up, Bodie. Turn it off. It seems fine. Yeah, I'll say we'll know more when we've rode it. So there we go. Just a little update. So let you know where we all are. I'm going to get this pushed outside now and clean this shed up because it's absolutely trashed, and do the final little touch-ups on the tank. Get that across to Ian. Obviously we'll leave it a day to cure nicely because he's got to handle it and do all his painting. I think we're in for a couple of nice days, so it'll bake in here nicely. So yeah, there we are. Next video we should be, I think next video I might stick around with Ian while he's doing the decals on the tank. There we go. That'll do. Cheers for watching, guys.